I was reborn on the anniversary of my death, returned to the moment just before my wife died for me. When I opened my eyes, she was screaming hysterically, demanding to know why I had forgotten our wedding anniversary again. In my last life, I had slammed the door and stormed out. The price was her life. This time, I pulled her into my arms. I looked into her eyes, red and swollen from the grief of losing our son, and my heart clenched in agony. "Let's have another baby," I said. To save her, I made a request that I knew would break her instantly. She thought it was the most vicious mockery imaginable, a blasphemy against our dead child. Only I knew it was the only atonement I could think of, the only tether that might keep her in this world. My words fell, and the living room plunged into silence. The frenzy on Elena's face froze, then slowly crumbled. She started to laugh. The sound grew sharper, squeezing out of her throat, tasting of copper and blood. Ha, ha, ha. Tears rolled down her cheeks along with the laughter. She suddenly shoved me away, pointing a trembling finger at my face. "Caleb, you're a monster." She lunged at me like a woman possessed, not attacking me, but the photo frame in my hands. "You don't deserve to touch him." I held on to it for dear life. The corners of the frame dug painfully into my knuckles. It was the only photo we had of us with our son. In my past life, on this very day, she had smashed it with her own hands. After she died, I knelt before the shards, spending the entire night trying to piece it back together, but I could never restore the complete smiles of our family of three. That regret had gnawed at every second of my remaining years. Seeing she couldn't wrestle it away, Elena suddenly stopped. She took a step back, looking at my desperate clutching of the frame with the same look one gives to garbage. "Pretending to be a good father now," she spat. "Where were you when Leo left us?" Every word was a poison-tipped knife, stabbing straight into my heart. In a last life, this was the sentence that enraged me. I had roared, "Are you done yet?" and slammed the door. My throat felt so dry I could barely speak. I summoned every ounce of strength to force out 2 words. "I'm sorry." This apology, a lifetime too late, sounded like the cheapest brush-off to her ears. Her eyes were bloodshot, the last trace of color draining from her face. "Get out," she whispered. "I don't want to see you." As if drained of all strength, or perhaps finally detonating the explosives piled up over 3 years, she began to smash things. The crystal sculpture friends gave us at our wedding shattered. The pottery vase she made herself shattered. She swept every book off the shelf in a frenzy. The living room became a disaster zone. But she was lucid. She lucidly avoided anything related to our son, even a tiny wooden block he had played with. I didn't dodge. A heavy mug whistled through the air and struck me square in the forehead. It hurt. Warm liquid trickled down my brow bone, blurring my vision. The world turned blood red. I thought, this is good. Let her vent. If it makes her feel even a fraction better. What's a little blood? Seeing the blood, she froze. But the hatred in her eyes didn't diminish. Instead, a cold sense of satisfaction crept in. She looked at the wound on my temple, her lips moving as if she wanted to speak. Finally, she spat out one word. "Deserve." She turned and retreated to the bedroom. Slam. The lock clicked shut. I sat on the living room sofa all night. The wound on my forehead had coagulated into something resembling a jagged, ugly centipede. From the bedroom, I first heard suppressed sobbing, and then nothing. I didn't dare knock, afraid of triggering her further. The me of the past hadn't known that this dead silence was far more terrifying than crying. At first light, relying on memory, I made the chicken dumpling soup she used to love back in college. I carried it carefully to the bedroom door and knocked. "Elena, eat something, please." No movement inside. I knocked again. "It's my fault. Don't punish yourself by starving." The door opened. She was in her pajamas, hair a mess, face pale as paper. She glanced at the bowl in my hand, then at the wound on my head. "No emotion." She reached out and took the bowl. I felt a wave of relief, thinking she was willing to forgive me a little. The next second, she turned, walked into the kitchen, and right in front of me, dumped the entire bowl of soup into the trash can. Broth and dumplings splashed everywhere. She slammed the empty bowl onto the counter with a harsh clank. "Stop acting. You disgust me." My heart sank into the cold garbage along with that soup. I walked over in silence, crouched down, and began cleaning up the mess she'd made. Just as I was about to tie up the trash bag, a blue and white empty medicine box pierced my vision. Sertraline, antidepressants. My chest tightened, suffocating me. In my past life, I only found a drawer full of these deep in her nightstand while sorting her belongings after she died. I rushed into the bedroom like a madman and grabbed her wrist, which was so thin it felt like mere bone. My voice trembled. "You've been taking medication?" Her secret exposed. She struggled violently like a hedgehog stripped of its quills. "What does it have to do with you?" "I am crazy. Didn't you already know that?" She yanked her arm away, her eyes full of panic and humiliation. Looking at her emaciated body, I had never felt such panic. I couldn't leave her alone anymore. I forcibly pulled her toward the door. "You're coming to the hospital with me." "Let go of me." My forcefulness triggered an even fiercer resistance. She screamed, punching and kicking. "Caleb Vance, you lunatic. You just want to lock me up in a psych ward, don't you? I'd rather die than go with you." Just then, my phone began ringing frantically. It was my business partner, Marcus. "Caleb, where the hell are you? We have a massive crisis at the company." I held on to Elena with one hand and answered the phone with the other, watching my wife struggle desperately before me. I roared into the receiver, "Don't call me even if the sky is falling." I hung up and tossed the phone aside. Elena was stunned for a second by my erratic behavior. In that split second, I seized the opportunity and scooped her up into my arms. Put me down." She pounded on my chest, but I held her tighter, ignoring all resistance, and carried her straight downstairs. A neighbor opened their door, casting a strange look our way. I didn't look sideways, just said coldly, "My wife is sick. I'm taking her to the doctor." I didn't go to the hospital. I knew taking her there now would only make her resist more. I drove the car, speeding all the way to the stretch of Puget Sound where we first fell in love. Elena fussed in the car for a while, but realizing it was useless, she fell silent. She leaned against the window, watching the streetscape blur backward, saying nothing. When we reached the water, I stopped the car. The sea breeze rushed in, carrying the scent of salt and brine. She looked at me coldly. "Revisiting old haunts? Playing the prodigal son, turning a new leaf?" "Caleb, I'm not a 3-year-old. Don't make me sick with these tricks." I unbuckled my seatbelt, grabbed a bottle of water from the back, opened it, and handed it to her. "I won't let you hurt alone anymore." She scoffed, turning her head away, refusing to look at me or take the water. I didn't push her. I set the water aside, pulled out my phone, brought up the confidential files for the company's core project, and placed it directly in front of her. My tone was more serious than it had ever been. "Julian Thorne is about to make a move on Project Ark. Elena Fronad." She knew Julian was my nemesis. We'd been fighting for years. But she didn't understand why I was suddenly telling her this. "Your business has nothing to do with me." Ignoring her indifference, I continued, pinpointing a specific technical vulnerability. "In 3 days, he will use this loophole to attack our servers. He's going to bribe Liam in our tech department to use a fake third-party security report as camouflage, making everyone drop their guard." These were the pieces of information I had painfully reconstructed after the company went bankrupt in my previous life. Elena's look finally shifted from mockery to a trace of suspicion. "How do you know?" I looked into her eyes, enunciating every word. "Because I had a very long dream. In that dream, I lost everything. I couldn't say rebirth. That was too absurd. I could only use this method to plant a seed of doubt in her mind." She looked at me, silent for a long time, long enough that I thought she wouldn't respond. Suddenly, she spoke. "What if what you're saying is a lie? Then treat me like a madman," I said. "You can keep hating me, treat me however you want. But if what I say is true, Elena, believe me this once. Don't push me away again." She fell silent again. The wind off the sound messed up her hair. She looked so fragile. After a long while, she whispered, "Take me home." I drove Elena home. When she got out, she didn't resist violently like before, but her eyes were complicated. I took an old phone I hadn't used in ages from the glove box and pressed it into her hand. "Only my number is in there. If anything happens, call me." She didn't accept it, but she didn't refuse either, letting me place the phone in her palm. Watching her go upstairs, I finally turned the car around and headed straight for the company. I immediately summoned Marcus and the entire core tech team for a meeting. "Starting now, suspend all external interfaces for Project Ark. Initiate the highest level system stress test." Marcus looked baffled. "Caleb, have you lost it? The project launches soon, and you're doing this now? And where were you this morning? You weren't answering your phone. Do you know that Julian Side is?" I cut him off. "Julian Side is exactly what I'm talking about." I repeated to them, word for word, what I had told Elena. The conference room erupted. Marcus looked at me like I was an alien. "Wait, what is your basis for this? Just because you had a dream? Are you under too much pressure lately? Are you having a breakdown?" I wasn't surprised by their reaction. I just said one thing. "Trust me this once." I stared at Marcus and repeated, "Just this once." Marcus and I had started this business together in college. He knew me. I never did anything without certainty. He hesitated for a long time before finally gritting his teeth. Fine, I'll go crazy with you this one time. If nothing happens, you're covering this month's bonuses. I immediately began the setup. Under the guise of a stress test, we built firewalls and data traps specifically targeting the vulnerability I had predicted overnight. Simultaneously, I hired a trusted private investigator to watch Liam in the tech department 24 hours a day. As expected, the next day, the PI snapped photos of Liam meeting Julian's assistant at a coffee shop. He accepted a thick envelope. Everything was exactly as it had been in my dream. 3 days later, at 3:00 p.m., the company's internal alarm system suddenly let out a piercing shriek. Marcus rushed out of his office, his face pale. It's here. It's actually happening. The head of tech roared, someone is attacking the server. Source unknown. Another shouted, something's wrong. The third-party security report shows everything is normal. I stood in the conference room, watching the frantic code scrolling across the main monitor, and spoke calmly. The report is fake. The attack source is coming from the office building where Julian's company is located. Open the data traps we prepared. Capture evidence of every move he makes. Everyone was shocked by my composure and precision. Finding their backbone, they immediately follow my commands. Because of the preemptive defenses, Julian's attack caused no substantial damage. Instead, every act of corporate espionage was perfectly recorded by the traps we had set. Marcus stared at me, his jaw hanging open. Are you a wizard? I ignored him and immediately had PR release a statement, attaching key evidence pointing directly to the competitor's malicious attack, while simultaneously filing a police report. The news caused an uproar. Julian's company's stock plummeted, trading halted within an hour. Meanwhile, at home, Elena was sitting on edge. A financial news alert suddenly popped up on her laptop. Arctech suffers malicious attack. Founder Caleb Vance turns the tide. Checkmates rival. She stared at the headline, freezing in place. She took out the old phone I had left her. On the screen, there was only one solitary contact, Caleb. She remembered the look in my eyes at the beach, remembered the absurd story about the dream. A crazy conjecture, one that sent chills down her spine, surfaced in her mind for the first time. Her hand trembling, she dialed my number. The call connected. Before I could speak, Elena's voice came through the receiver, carrying a tremor she didn't even notice. The news. Is it true? It is, I answered. The line went silent for a long time. I could hear her ragged breathing. I'm coming home right now, I said, and hung up. I thought that after this, our relationship might thaw. But I was wrong. When I got home, I was met with even more distance and guarded suspicion from Elena. She sat on the sofa, far away from me, looking at me like I was a monster wearing human skin. Who are you really? She demanded, fear saturating her voice. Is this some kind of conspiracy? What do you want? My heart stung. I walked over, wanting to get close. I just want to protect you. She shot up and took a large step back, as if avoiding a plague. Protect me? This way? You make me sick. Her fear and anger were like a dull knife, sawing back and forth across my heart. I couldn't explain Rebirth. Any explanation would sound like an even more ridiculous lie to her ears. The atmosphere between us dropped to absolute zero again. Just then her phone rang. It was her college best friend, Chloe, whom she hadn't contacted in a long time. Elena, long time no see. How have you been? I just got back from overseas. Let's find a time to get together. How about tomorrow at the Mountain View Spa Lodge? My treat. We need to catch up properly. Elena was in a state of extreme mental exhaustion. She was desperate to escape me, this monster she feared. This invitation was like a life raft. Okay, she agreed almost without hesitation. Hanging up, I saw a flash of relief on her face. My blood ran cold. The Mountain View Spa Lodge. In my past life, that was where she was lured and kidnapped by Julian's men. Julian, having failed plan, had shifted strategies so quickly, targeting Elena instead. Alarm bells rang instantly in my head. I demanded, "Where are you going?" She glanced at me coldly, with a vindictive pleasure. "My business doesn't concern you." The more she acted this way, the more panicked I became. I stepped forward and snatched her phone, scrolling to the call log. Chloe, Mountain View Spa Lodge. Everything matched. My face went white. I practically ordered her, "You are not going." My intense reaction only confirmed her suspicion that I was a controlling maniac. She smiled, incredibly mocking. "Why not? Caleb, you're overstepping." She walked past me, stopping at the door to look back, her eyes full of defiance and resolve. "The more you forbid me to go, the more I'm going." She slammed the door and left. I stared at the closed door, knowing I couldn't stop her physically without making things worse. The helplessness of my past life tried to entangle me again. No, I wasn't the Caleb of the past life. I would not let history repeat itself. I calmed down quickly and immediately initiated Plan B. I dialed the private investigator. Target subject Elena Vance is going to the Mountain View Spa Lodge tomorrow. Do as I said before. Double the manpower. Watch her like a hawk. The next day, Elena went to the lodge as planned. My people had arrived early, positioning themselves in every corner of the resort. I sat in a nondescript car outside, wearing headphones, listening to the audio feed from a bug disguised as a brooch I'd slipped on her coat. Elena arrived at the reserved private room. Her friend Chloe was already there. Elena, you finally made it. I miss you so much. Chloe hugged her enthusiastically, but Elena seemed uncomfortable. Why is it so quiet here? Elena asked. Chloe smiled and explained. I rented out the whole place. Just the two of us, so we can catch up properly. Watching the surveillance feed, I saw Chloe's smile was stiff. They chatted about trivial past events, and Elena gradually let her guard down. Halfway through, Chloe made an excuse about getting wine and left the room. Elena sat there alone, seemingly unsettled. She unconsciously rubbed the old phone I had forced on her. Suddenly, as if making up her mind, she took out the phone and sent me a text. Only 3 words. Location. Lodge. Careful. The moment I received the message, my heart skipped a beat. I smiled. This was the first time in 3 years she had actively cared about me, even if it was just a warning. Just then, the door to the room was pushed open. It wasn't Chloe who entered, but 2 thugs with unfriendly expressions. Elena's face changed, and she stood up immediately. Who are you? The lead man sneered, closing in on her. Mrs. Vance, our boss would like to invite you for tea. Losing patience, they grabbed her. Elena screamed as one of them covered her mouth, dragging her toward a black van waiting outside. My people were ready. The van door was ripped open roughly. The kidnappers tried to stuff Elena inside, but the moment the door opened, they froze. Inside wasn't their accomplice, but 4 bodyguards in black suits, looking grim. The bodyguards moved efficiently, swarming out and pinning the 2 kidnappers to the ground in seconds. I stepped out from the shadows. Elena saw me, her eyes widening in shock. I didn't look at her. I walked straight to the lead kidnapper, raised my foot, and kicked him hard in the chest. He groaned, curling up on the ground. I crouched down, grabbed him by the collar, and hauled him up. My eyes were so cold, they made Elena feel like I was a stranger. Who sent you? The kidnapper spat a mouthful of bloody saliva, playing tough. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't waste words. Snap. With zero expression, I broke one of his fingers. Art. The agony tore a scream from him like a slaughtered pig. The other kidnapper was so terrified he wet himself. Elena was thoroughly frightened by this side of me. She shrank into the corner, watching me with horror, her body trembling uncontrollably. I looked at the kidnapper again, my voice devoid of warmth. I'll ask one more time. Who sent you? It was Boss Julian. Julian Thorne. He finally broke, shouting it out. Getting the answer, I let go, letting him collapse into a heap. I took off my jacket, walked over to Elena, and gently draped it over her trembling shoulders. The ruthless man from a moment ago vanished instantly. In a voice only she could hear, I whispered, "Don't be afraid. I'm here. This time, I won't let anything happen to you." In the car on the way home, the silence was deathly. I drove while Elena sat in the passenger seat, still wrapped in my jacket. She kept her head down, body still shaking slightly, whether from fear or cold, I didn't know. The sound of repressed sobbing was magnified infinitely in the small space. Finally, she spoke, her voice terribly hoarse. "You knew all along, didn't you? The company today. You knew everything." Her tone wasn't a question. It was a statement. I gripped the steering wheel in silence, not knowing how to start. My silence seemed to be the final straw that broke her. She suddenly screamed, like a wounded, trapped animal. "Who are you really? Are you even Caleb? Why have you changed like this? Say something." Tires screeched against the asphalt, slicing through the night sky. I slammed on the brakes, stopping the car on the deserted roadside. I turned to look at her. My face was wet with tears. I was crying harder, more wretchedly than she was. Yes, I knew everything, damn it. The pain, regret, and fear accumulated over 2 lifetimes erupted in that moment. I roared, slamming my fist against the steering wheel. I knew Julian would try to destroy the company. I knew he would send people to kidnap you today. I also knew that in the last life, on this very day, at this very place, you died in my arms taking the knife meant for me. Elena was stunned into silence by my words. The blood drained completely from her face. She stared at me blankly, forgetting to cry, forgetting to breathe. I wept like a child abandoned by the world, clutching the steering wheel, resting my forehead against it, my shoulders shaking violently. I was reborn. God saw what a bastard I was, and sent me back to atone. Are you satisfied now? I finished, drained of all strength. The entire car fell into a silence, more terrifying than death. I don't know how much time passed, maybe a century. Elena looked at me, her eyes holding unprecedented shock, absurdity, and a trace of disbelief turning into realization. She looked as if she were observing a madman, yet simultaneously trying to piece together a shattered truth. She remembered the day of my rebirth, when I said amidst her breakdown, "Let's have another baby." She remembered my precise prophecy. She remembered me holding her, whispering in her ear, "This time, I won't let anything happen to you." All the anomalies now had an explanation, one so absurd she couldn't accept it. After we got home, Elena locked herself in her room. For 2 whole days, she didn't come out, nor did she communicate with me. I didn't disturb her. I knew she needed time to digest everything. I handed all the evidence of the kidnapping, including Julian's transfer records and the call recordings with the kidnappers, to the police. Combined with the previous corporate espionage case, Julian faced multiple charges and was swiftly arrested. His business empire collapsed overnight. After handling all of this, I felt like I had fought a battle that left me exhausted. I bought a bouquet of white daisies and drove alone to the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. My son's headstone was in a quiet corner. In the photo, his smile was innocent and bright. How long had it been since I visited him? 3 years. His father, hadn't visited once. I hadn't dared. I was afraid that seeing that smiling face would remind me of Elena's tears, of my own incompetence and cowardice. I set the flowers down. Just as I was about to crouch and wipe the dust from the stone, I noticed a slender figure already standing there. It was Elena. She wore a black trench coat, the wind lifting her long hair, making her look even more frail. She didn't turn around, just gently stroked the photo of our son on the stone. "The year he first left, I came every day," she said softly, calmly. "I told him Daddy was busy with work, and when Daddy wasn't busy, he'd come see him. I lied to him, and I lied to myself." My eyes instantly welled up. I walked to her side and stood with her. "I am sorry. I never came once. I was too afraid." She finally turned to look at me. There was no hatred in her eyes, nor fear, just a sorrow so deep it touched the bone. "Is what you said true?" I nodded heavily, my voice raspy and broken. "I remember the way that knife came at me, and I remember the way you threw yourself in front of it. You bled more than I did. It just wouldn't stop." Elena's tears fell silently again. This time, not from hate, but from a pain she had never imagined, a pain that transcended life and death. She reached out and gently touched the scabbed wound on my forehead. She asked, "Did it hurt?" I knew she was asking about the me who died in her arms in the past life. And she was asking about herself, living in pain for these 3 years. I shook my head and held her ice-cold hand. "It doesn't hurt anymore. Seeing you alive, nothing hurts anymore." We went home together, silent the whole way, but the atmosphere in the car was no longer frozen solid. Beneath the ice, signs of a thaw appeared. She still chose to sleep in a separate room, but I knew the door in her heart had cracked open just a sliver. I began a clumsy courtship, like a beginner. I took over all the housework. I studied the dishes she liked using recipes on my phone. Day 1, sweet and sour ribs turned into charcoal ribs. Day 2, scrambled eggs with tomatoes were salty enough to be bitter. She watched me in the kitchen, flustered and hopping around as oil splattered, and for the first time, the corner of her mouth held a faint, barely there curve. Though she said nothing and silently ordered takeout, that night, I saw her secretly dump that plate of black ribs into the disposal, rather than doing it in front of me. To me, that was monumental progress. Every night, I placed a glass of warm milk by her door. Every morning, the glass was empty. Once I stumbled upon a video of her dancing in college and watched it, mesmerized, in the living room. In the video, she was confident, soaring like a beautiful swan. She happened to come out of her room and caught me. She walked over quickly and turned off the TV with a cold face. "Boring." She said it, but her ears were bright red. Over the weekend, my parents heard about Julian's arrest. Hearing rumors from somewhere, my mom called. Her tone was harsh. "Caleb, did that wife of yours cause trouble for you again? A woman just staying home all day. How does she have so much drama? I told you long ago she's a jinx, ever since she—" I didn't wait for her to finish. I interrupted her directly. "Mom." My voice was cold. "Elena is my life. From now on, her word is my word. Anyone who makes her unhappy makes me unhappy. You're my mother, but I'm telling you the same thing. I hung up. Turning around, I saw Elena's bedroom door open a crack. She stood behind it, listening quietly. Our gazes met in the air, and she quickly closed the door. But I saw her eyes shift. A few days later, I gave her a key. I bought the dance studio on the south side. Your old teacher is substituting there. You can go back and visit anytime. I left the key on her nightstand with a note. Be yourself again. You're most beautiful when you dance. She didn't go, but she put the key in her drawer. That night, after working continuously for days to handle the company aftermath, I finally collapsed. I ran a high fever, lying in bed, drifting in and out of consciousness. In my haze, I kept calling her name. Elena. I'm sorry. Don't leave. I felt someone wiping my forehead and palms with a warm towel over and over. I tried hard to open my eyes, but couldn't. When I woke up the next day, the fever had broken. Water and fever reducers sat on a nightstand. My room showed traces of her presence. The company weathered the storm and, a blessing in disguise, won the municipal project we had been competing with Julian for. Project ARC was a massive success. Marcus proposed a grand celebration gala to boost morale. He specifically instructed me, this time, you have to bring Elena. I extended the invitation to her. I was nervous, afraid she would refuse. She was silent for a long time, long enough that I thought she wouldn't agree. Suddenly, she stood up and went to her room. Wait for me. Half an hour later, she walked out. I was stunned. She had changed into the starry night dress I gave her for our first anniversary. The deep blue velvet skirt was dusted with tiny diamonds, looking as if she were wearing the entire galaxy. Because she had lost so much weight, the dress was a bit loose, yet she was still breathtakingly beautiful. She wore light makeup, hiding the exhaustion under her eyes, looking like the radiant Elena of the past. At the banquet hall, the moment she appeared, she became the center of attention. Marcus came up, whistling exaggeratedly. Elena, you look incredible tonight. Our Caleb is a lucky man. Elena smiled faintly, saying nothing, simply holding my arm. Halfway through the banquet, a liquor distributor who had previously been close with Julian walked over with a glass in hand. He looked at me with a fake smile. CEO Vance, riding high on success, I see. Then, his gaze shifted to Elena, carrying a trace of malicious scrutiny. Mrs. Vance is lucky too, unlike the old hag of my house, always causing chaos. Mrs. Vance being so leisurely is truly enviable. He emphasized the word leisurely, implying she was useless. A gossipy woman nearby immediately chimed in. Right, women should have their own things to do, or at least worry about the children. Oh, apologies, Mrs. Vance, I forgot you. Before she could finish, I picked up a glass of red wine from the table and splashed it directly into the woman's face. The banquet hall went dead silent. Everyone stared at me in shock. The woman screamed, her makeup ruined, looking wretched. I pulled Elena by the waist, holding her tightly against me. I scanned the room with icy eyes, enunciating every word. Let me introduce you. This is my love, Elena, a dancer. She is the only pride of Caleb Vance's life. I'm putting this out there today. Anyone who shows her the slightest disrespect is an enemy of Caleb Vance, and an enemy of all of ArcTech. We will not stop until one of us is finished. I took Elena's hand and, amidst everyone's shocked and fearful gazes, turned and left the venue. In the parking lot, silence reigned. I felt a bit regretful, afraid my impulsiveness had scared her or embarrassed her. I am sorry, I started to explain, but she suddenly stopped walking. Then, under the cold moonlight, she actively took my hand. Her hand was cold, but her grip was firm. She looked up at me, her eyes rimmed with red. Caleb, let's go home. Back at home, the entryway light was warm and bright. Elena didn't go to her room, as usual. Instead, she sat on the living room sofa and poured me a glass of water. She took out the photo frame I had snatched from her hands, using a soft cloth to gently wipe the dust from it. In the photo, our 3-year-old son sat on my shoulders, laughing while she stood beside us, looking at us with eyes full of tenderness. Before, I always felt it was my fault for not taking good care of him. She whispered, her voice thick with emotion. If I hadn't taken him to the park that day, if I had held his hand tighter, he wouldn't have. I walked over, sat beside her, and held her cold, trembling hand. It wasn't your fault. I interrupted her, my voice firm. It was my fault. I didn't take care of either of you. Back then, I only thought about the company, about making money. I thought giving you the best material life made me a good husband, a good father. I was wrong, terribly wrong. For the first time, we talked calmly about the child we lost. We talked about how wrinkly he looked when he was born, about the first time he said dada, about how he loved sleeping with his teddy bear. There were tears, but more warmth. The scar we had sealed away for 3 years, too afraid to touch, was gently uncovered tonight, cleansed, and then began to heal. Elena leaned on my shoulder like a weary bird, finally finding a harbor to rest. She whispered, "Thank you for coming back." I lowered my head and kissed the tears from her cheek. "I should be thanking you for still waiting for me." The atmosphere warmed, the air filling with a long-suppressed love. I tentatively, gently kissed her lips. She stiffened but didn't pull away. She responded to my kiss awkwardly, clumsily. This kiss held no lust, only endless pity and the cherishing of something lost and found. After a long time, she pushed me away, a moving flush coloring her eyes and brow. She stood up, didn't go to her room, but opened the door to mine. She stood in the doorway, looking back at me, her voice as low as a feather brushing against skin. "Don't leave tonight." My heart pounded wildly. That night, there was no frantic taking, only the gentlest comfort and solace. I kissed her over and over from her forehead to her eyes, to the faint scar on her back left from saving me. Afterward, Elena curled up in my arms and fell into a deep sleep. I watched her peaceful face. It was the first time in 3 years I had seen her sleep so soundly, her brow no longer knit with insoluble sorrow. I held her tightly, as if holding my entire world that I had regained. This time, I would never let go. 1 year later, our wedding anniversary. Time flies. I clear my schedule early and decorated the house. No expensive gifts, no romantic restaurant. I simply recreated the dinner from our first official date in college. Steak, red wine, and her favorite piano piece playing in the background. In the afternoon, Elena returned from her dance studio. She was wearing simple workout clothes, a thin layer of sweat on her forehead, but her face was beaming with a brilliant smile. She looked at least 5 years younger than a year ago. The sorrow and gloom in her eyes had completely dispersed, leaving only sunshine and confidence. She had returned to the stage, becoming that dazzling dancer once again. Seeing the table full of food, she covered her mouth in surprise. "You made this." I pulled out her chair with a smile. "Taste and see if Chef Vance's skills have declined." Over dinner, we chatted about light topics. Her new dance drama, my company's new project, just like an ordinary couple passionately in love. After dinner, Elena pulled a beautifully wrapped small box from behind her back and handed it to me. "Happy anniversary." I was a bit surprised and opened the box. Inside was a pair of tiny baby shoes knitted from soft white yarn. The shoes were only half the size of my palm, exquisite and adorable. I froze, looking up at her. She wore a gentle, slightly shy smile. She walked behind me, wrapped her arms around me, and rested her head on my shoulder. Her warm breath brushed my ear. In a voice almost inaudible, she whispered, "Caleb, let's have another baby." My eyes instantly turned red. I turned around and hugged her tightly, fiercely, as if to knead her into my very bones. I knew that this time, this sentence was no longer a blade stabbing into the heart, no longer a painful curse. It was our shared past, gifting our future the most beautiful prologue. Story complete.